Welcome. My name is Jeff White. I'm President and CEO of J.A. White & Associates. We're going to talk about subcontract management today from a CPSR perspective. So I'd like for you to sit back and enjoy the presentation. The topics we're going to cover today include the overview of subcontract management and CPSRs. We're going to talk about non-competitive source selection. We're going to get into a discussion about price analysis as well as negotiations. And we're going to end today talking about file documentation. Unit 1's topic deals with the overview of subcontract management as well as Contractors Purchasing System Review, otherwise known as CPSRs. Here's what I expect for you to learn today as we talk about subcontract management from an overview perspective. We're going to describe the purpose of subcontracts and subcontractual relationships. We're going to get into a discussion relative to the process of CPSRs and how companies are selected from a CPSR perspective. And we're going to talk about the audit scope of a CPSR. Finally, we're going to talk about the results of a CPSR in terms of what happens if a firm actually fails a CPSR. Let's talk a little bit about contractual relationships. The purchase orders that we issue, as well as the subcontracts, the whole purpose behind them is to establish relationships between a prime contractor and a subcontractor. When the government looks at a purchase order or a subcontract, they're less concerned about the form or the format. They're more concerned about one important factor, and that is how that document actually protects the government's interests. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about those relationships and how the government is protected within those relationships. This slide, slide 6, talks about relationships between the government and a contractor, as well as a contractor and a subcontractor. So if you were to take a look at relationship A and B, you'll see that the government issues a document called a contract. That is the contractual document that controls the relationship between the government and the prime contractor. We as a prime issue a document called a subcontract. Now, don't be concerned about the format of that document. It can be a purchase order, it can be an independent consulting agreement, it can actually be a subcontract, it can be an IDIQ relationship. Doesn't really make a difference. What really matters is that the fact that we as a prime release that agreement between us and our subcontractors, thus creating an actual contractual relationship. What you'll see in the slide also is that there's a big red between the government and the subcontractor. And really what that means is that there is no contractual relationship between the government and our subs. So the government actually relies on us as a prime contractor to actually manage the relationship between us, the government, and our subcontractors. So how does the government manage that relationship? Well, they use subcontract management tools such as advance notification and consent. That's a process in regulation whereby we as a prime contractor must give the government a heads up, an advance notice before we actually issue a subcontract to a subcontractor. I'm not going to go into the details in terms of the regulations as far as when these actually happen. What I want you to remember is that your subcontract administrators and your buyers actually know the rules of engagement in terms of when advance notification actually applies. What I want you to remember as a PM or a requisitioner is that you cannot issue a subcontract or a purchase order, i.e. tell a sub to start working before we actually get that approval in place. We're going to talk a little bit more about advance notification and consent a little bit later on. Consent is similar to advance notification in that you notify the government in advance. However, in a consent situation, you actually ask for the government to approve the transaction prior to the sub actually getting that subcontract. Slightly different from advance notification. Again, we'll cover that a little bit later on in another unit. Debarment, that's an important process by which the government actually does due diligence on subcontractors to ensure that they're not violating any laws or regulations, they're paying their taxes in time, they're eligible to receive government contracts. We have a process as government contractors to ensure that we do not do business with companies that are debarred, suspended, or otherwise ineligible to do business with the government. The way we do it, we go to a website, and you'll want to take a note of this, www.epls.gov. That website is where we as a contractor can put in the name of a potential prime sub and actually look at their records to see whether or not they are eligible for a government subcontract. That is a contractual requirement that we have over $30,000. So let me give you a hint, something to keep in mind. If you're doing business with companies and you're talking to them in the early stages of planning prior to putting a teaming agreement in place, I would strongly recommend that you actually go to that website, put in that company's name to see whether or not they can actually receive a potential subcontract in the future. It'll actually save you some time because you don't want to enter into any type of discussion about a teaming agreement only to find out later on that the subcontractor isn't eligible at all to actually play in your sandbox. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I've covered a lot of information. I tried to make it somewhat lively. At the end of the day, you play a vital role in compliance with CPSR requirements. Your buyers and your subcontract administrators, they are there to help you in the process. I encourage you, if you have questions as a result of this presentation, if you have questions as a result of reading the policy and procedure manual, please reach out to them. They are fully aware, they are fully equipped and fully trained to assist you during the procurement process. I thank you for your time and your attention. Have a good day.